Good evening and welcome to the Monday, September 25th Administrative Public Works Committee. My name is Alderman Braithwaite and we have a quorum. Is there a motion to approve the September 11th minutes?
Move approval.
Is there a second? Alderman Rainey, Alderman Fleming? Sorry. I'll second it.
Second, sorry.
All those in favor, or excuse me, are there comments or edits?
No.
Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. I think we're going to go ahead and take public comments, and then we'll go through the rest of the items. The first speaker, and if the first three can please line up, Mr. Janad Ritsky, followed by Kevin Brown, followed by Sarah, forgive me for messing up this name, Vander Wicken. Did I say that? Okay, thank you. Mr. Ritsky.
Janad Risky. I'm going to go through some of the items on here I want to talk about. First item I'm going to talk about is Robert Crown. I have some concerns really about the process of Crown at the moment, because why would we award a schematic design and at the same night award basically the rest of the, go into construction documents and have two contracts? Typically that's not a correct process. Also, my concern is I don't believe the city has people that have properly, will have anybody really looking at this to see if this is going to be done right. The architect's going to design it, but who from the city is going to make sure this thing works? We have numerous buildings here that don't really function well, that have cost us a lot of money. I think the most recent example is the service building, where we've had 3 structural failures and the city has no solution how to fix it. And that's pretty bad. We're over $1 million now on that. And that's been all sort of covered up, I would say, unfortunately. So that's really all I have to say about that. I've expressed concerns that there's really nobody qualified. So it's just more taxpayer money down the drain. I'd like to know really a little bit about why we're terminating the roading contract too, what happened there. But that I'm just asking about. And then Fountain Square. I've driven by Fountain Square quite a bit, and it's really an embarrassment how that job was run. You know, the city put up some silly blue things on the fence, but really the site was a total mess. And it really makes me wonder who at the city was responsible for that site and the downtown area to leave it at such a mess. And what I've done in my own business, you know, and working, you know, in construction, a messy site indicates really poor quality of work, and really right in the downtown that was a true embarrassment. Then I'm going to briefly talk about the refuge here. Tonight we're approving these contracts, which I think is fine. I believe we met on Wednesday night. Mr. Lyons is going to give a spreadsheet, which I think is very important. I want to stress why it's important. The spreadsheet will basically outline each of what the providers is costing us against the expenses. And that's important in the sense that we know what the recycling is. The recycling basically is a cost that we need to understand probably the most, and understand that very well, what it's going to cost us. The other 2 costs are fairly clear, and that's for the refuge and the yard waste, and those are going to get passed on to the taxpayers. But in the past, the city has not done a very good job on accounting cost, and I think that needs to be very carefully looked at. I'm not advocating city employees be let go, but what I want to know is the real cost to do business. And if we don't know the real cost, we have a problem. And finally, let me see, well, if I have anything else here. The other issue I feel I'm very concerned about.
You're right at 3 minutes.
All right, let me just finish this very quickly.
Thank you.
Is wholesale water. Mr. Stonebeck appears to have now written a new contract. Their contract appears to be different than the other contracts. I was told in the past all the new contracts were going to be written the same. And I've talked about this for a very long time. We do not have an understanding of that business, and it's a serious, serious problem. And I really think the city needs to get a consultant in here to go through that business and determine what's going on. I think it's an outrage because you're going to raise these rates, and you really have no understanding of what you're doing. And I mean, I'm tired of it, really. I think a lot of people will be angry, and they should be angry in this town.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
To the committee chair and members of the committee,
city staff, and community members. I'm Kevin Brown. I'm rising here to speak for just a moment on the ex-offender hiring policy. I think this was discussed in July, and I didn't have an opportunity to give comment, so I wanted to share a few thoughts. I'm a taxpayer. I live at 705 Hinman. I'm the Community Services Manager in the Parks and Rec Department. I manage the Youth and Young Adult Division that targets at-risk young people ages 14 through 26. And we also work with the adult members of those families of young people. The criminal history criteria for the employment policy as currently practiced and written has negatively impacted our efforts to serve young people and improve their lives. I want to read two examples that are antithetical to the policy and speak to my concerns. The examples are from a report called Back to Business, How Hiring Formerly Incarcerated Job Seekers. These are citizen comments. How job seekers benefit your company. This is an example. Susie's application to work at Walmart Distribution Center was flagged when a background check came back with 9 convictions, ranging from drug possession to attempted first-degree murder. She was 17 when she was a relative, also a teenager, were playing with a gun when it discharged and killed her companion. She was convicted and served 9 years in state prison. Upon release, she started stealing and delivering drugs for drug dealers. Within a few years, though, Susie began taking steps toward rehabilitation to change her life. She joined a local church, began to speak at local prisons about her experiences with rehabilitation and recovery. She has spent several years volunteering with the local sports team that mentors low-income children of color, and recently she was appointed to a board of directors for a local rehabilitation and reentry center for formerly incarcerated individuals. When she applied for the job at Walmart in 2008, the company gave her a fair chance based on all the facts presented during the background check process. She's performed so well that she was promoted to an area manager in January 2017. Area managers make 6 figures plus. Thomas H. was a Walmart employee who got a second chance under this policy, and in 1990 he was working as a part-time armed security guard at a warehouse to pay for college. He dreamed of becoming a pharmacist, and unbeknownst to him, the warehouse was being used at night as an illegal gambling facility. One night, FBI and the local police department raided the warehouse, and Thomas believed he was in danger, fired his weapon, and killed 2 officers. He was found guilty of 2 counts of manslaughter, sentenced to 5 years, for which he served all of except 11 months. After being pardoned by the state's governor, he finished pharmacy school, began a career as a pharmacist. In 2015, he applied to Walmart for a pharmacy position, and when a background check flagged his conviction, the hiring team weighed his criminal record against his nearly 24 years without arrest and decided that the risk in hiring him was very low. For the past 2 years, Thomas has managed the Walmart Supercenter pharmacy. Here in the city of Evanston, we have individuals working here with similar histories and stories that have worked here for many years with great success and have made great contributions to the city of Evanston. However, under the current ineligibility criteria that you will review tonight and discuss, none of the individuals that I work with would be working here today. So for decades, the city of Evanston operated with great success with the Walmart-like review process that provided similar types of second chance opportunities to individuals in our community. The ineligibility criteria as listed is not only punitive, but feeds into the notion of perpetual punishment. I also believe it is discriminatory on its face. Under the current ineligibility criteria, many individuals that we work with in the 2nd, 5th, 8th, and 9th wards will lose their ability to work, even as seasonal employees with the city of Evanston. Hope you'll consider that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sarah Vanderwicken,
Vanderwicken, right.
Thank
Good
you.
evening. As you may I'm sure know, the issue of hiring of people with criminal records is a very difficult one because, among other reasons, the arrest and conviction rates for minority people is way disproportionate to their criminal activity. And because of this, the EEOC has developed guidelines that require individualized review before refusing to hire somebody based on a criminal conviction. No one conviction should be by itself a basis for disallowing somebody from a job. And the city of Evanston, it looks like, has not really delved into this with great vigor. And the proposed set of criteria are really lacking in the kind of individualized review that they propose. The city of Chicago has recently amended their ordinance on hiring and has a much more robust set of criteria, which really enables a greater individualized look. They include, in addition to the things that Evanston includes, besides the nature of the specific offense and the nature of the sentencing and the number of convictions, the length of time that has passed following the applicant's most recent conviction, the relationship between the applicant's crimes and the nature of the relevant position, the age of the applicant at the time of his most recent conviction, the evidence of rehabilitation, including but not limited to whether or not the applicant has completed a treatment or counseling program or received a certification of relief from disabilities of good conduct, which is something the court can do upon application, the extent to which the applicant has been open, honest, and cooperative in examining his background, and any other information relevant to the applicant's suitability for the relevant position. These criteria provide a much more well, as I said, robust and meaningful review of whether or not that conviction should by itself have a role in the hiring decision. There's two other flaws in the proposal for Evanston. One is that it doesn't require the city to tell an applicant if their lack of being hired is based on a conviction. And that should certainly be done. One thing that the EEOC found in lengthy hearings is the number of inaccuracies in people's criminal records that, when there's a public record review, they can be, really inaccurate. People's, names coming up when it's really somebody else, and all sorts of problems with that. And also, they often don't include evidence of, or the fact that a conviction has been expunged, or that there's been some other method of ameliorating the fact of the conviction. And the last thing is that this says that if the person is hired, all the records of this should be in their personnel file. No. That's a real gross violation of somebody's privacy. Nobody should be, privy to that information other than the person themselves and the hiring manager.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. I don't see Mr. Burns, Bobby Burns. Oh, there you go.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Evanston residents. My name is Bobby Burns. I'm at 301 Custer here in Evanston, longtime Evanston resident. And just wanted to start off by saying that, at the root of this, the issue around the offender hiring for me is the fact that I think most young people growing, young adults, display at some point some risky behavior. And I would say 90% of the people probably in this room have done something criminal, but they weren't caught. That was the difference. Now, I won't make y'all raise your hand if you've done anything criminal. Just in your head, nod with me in agreement. But I think that's the difference in most cases is you just didn't get caught. But it's not that you didn't have the aptitude to make a mistake and to conduct yourself in a certain way that could land you a charge. And so I think often, depending on where you reside, your zip code, and what you look like, and sometimes what you wear, could make it more likely that you're going to get a charge. You're going to make a mistake as a young person, as a growing adult, and get a charge. And for other people, it's dealt with as a family issue or a health issue. And even if one would argue that, no, everybody gets kind of arrested at the same rate, then certainly we could agree that if your parents have the financial ability to get you out of a bind, to hire appropriate legal representation, to get something sealed, to get a charge dropped, or to get a record expunged, that certainly has an effect on one's ability to kind of move beyond a mistake. And so I would hope that this body today just sends a clear message that we're gonna get behind folks that have made mistakes, that we're gonna let them grow beyond that one mistake, and that we're not gonna deny them opportunity to just get on with their lives and make something of themselves. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. Ms. Green? Okay. Alderman Rainey? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
we have one of the longest agendas I've ever
This
seen.
is our last comment. Yep.
No, it has nothing to do with
Oh.
the comments. Sort of has something to do.
Please.
One of the longest agendas I've ever seen with some of the most important issues I've
agree.
ever been faced with in my years in council. And I am just wishing you would accept my comment that this item for discussion appears to me dead on arrival at this committee, the ex-offender hiring policy that's been presented to us. I think it needs to go back where it came from and worked on by people who are so much more qualified than I, including some of the speakers here tonight. I mean, it just sounds awful. And I do not feel qualified to deal with this, but I certainly don't like what I've heard so far. And, I mean, we could beat this to death for hours, and I don't like what I've heard. I don't know about any of you, but it's just not sitting well.
Right. I would agree. And I see Alderman Fleming's light.
Well, so when you said dead on arrival, I was concerned you were going to vote against it. So,
I mean,
yes. So
I
I
talk about it.
also brought this up, the first time, and it's back for review. And I do have a lot of concerns, including some which have not been mentioned. So I would be happy to pull this off the agenda and maybe have a subcommittee of which I would like to be part of. Maybe we can have Kevin Brown and some other knowledgeable folks in the community for a very short subcommittee
Sure.
to hash this out with HR and legal.
I think that's an excellent idea. So.
Away from this dais.
Right.
Right,
No.
right,
just
right, right. So
another
I think we have the city manager, corporate attorney, Ms. Lynn, all in the room, so we'll make sure that happens. Thank you, and thank you all for the comments. Just a heads up, we do have some items that are going to be removed, just for members of the committee. I've met with staff, and we'll get into that after we get through the last comment. Ms. Holmes, honorable.
Remove the item from APUW to P&D, so just take me out.
Okay, thank you very much. And that ends our comments. No, he's good. He has to be removed also. We'll go ahead and get started with our payroll bills. Item A1, Alderman Fleming, take item A1 and A2, please.
Yes. Move for action, payroll August 21st, 2017 through September 3rd, 2017 for the amount of $2,808,524.51, and the bills list dated September 12th, 2017, $4,415,588.36, as well as credit card activity period ending July 31st, 2017, in the amount of $214,653.67 is for action.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Everyone had an opportunity to read through the bills list. No questions or comments? All right. All those in favor of passing item A1 and A2, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 3.1, Alderman Rainey.
Yes, A3.1 is for action. It's a single-source purchase of 2 Genetec license plate recognition systems from Federal Signal Corporation in the amount of $85,500.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Simmons, item A3.2, please.
Staff recommends City Council authorize City Manager to execute a 5-year contract for an integrated police body-worn in-car and investigative interview room camera system and conductive electronic weapons with Axon Enterprise Incorporated, formerly known as Taser International. The cost of the 5-year contract after grant reimbursement will be $1,145,973.26. Funding for this program will be provided with a budget amount of $525,000 for 2017 and 18 and a portion of 19. The total amount is allocated as follows: $325,000 from 215 GO bonds and $200,000 from 2016 GO bonds carryover. This is for action.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alderman Fleming? And I'm
I
gonna-
just have a quick question, just to make sure I understand
eyes
this.
up, yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commander. Just want to make sure I'm right. So these are cameras for every officer, for every car, and then you spoke about in the presentation you gave about the body camera that the taser would also be connected to trigger the camera. Is that correct?
Good evening, Alderman, Committee Chair, and members of the committee. Yes, in answer to your question, it will outfit, this initial contract will outfit 120 officers with body cameras and also 45 cars with cameras. It'll also cover the interview rooms that are covered by the Juvenile Bureau and Detective Bureau when interviewing suspects, witnesses, and also victims.
Okay, and is this the taser that is also connected to the body camera?
Correct, yes. There's an automatic signaling device when a taser is used that'll signal, and anybody within 30 feet of wearing a body camera will be automatically activated.
Okay. Do we keep the cameras that we had during the trial period, or do we get some kind of refund for returning those? All
We are obligated to return those, and that process has already begun.
right, thank you.
Just a quick question,
Yes, sir.
DC. So what are the privacy laws around recording juveniles?
So the officers can record juveniles when responding to calls for service. The release of the information is governed by FOIA.
Okay. And so we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on this evening, so maybe I'll save some of it. But the other question that I have is, how long do we keep that video on file?
So it depends by state law, by the Body-Worn Camera Act that went into effect January 1 of 2016. They're separated into flagged events and non-flagged events. So what's considered a non-flagged event would the video has to be deleted on the 91st day by Illinois law, and flagged items must be kept for a minimum of 2 years. There's also other exceptions in terms of training, and if there's also administrative, civil, or criminal proceedings related to that body camera video, then that video will only be deleted upon a court order related to that hearing.
Thank you. Is that act currently on our public website?
It is, sir.
It is? Where can our residents find it?
If you go to the police department and look up the body-worn camera website portion of the police, it has our draft policy and also a link to the Illinois law regarding that.
Mm-hmm. And I know that we've had this pilot program for how long? And I think you've made it around to all of the wards, correct?
The offer was, I didn't address all wards, but several wards were covered. I know your ward was a couple times. But we've been in the trial since June 2nd.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 1.1 million. All right. Seeing no lights, this is for action. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman, I'll take item. I'd like to move item 3.3. It's a single audit fiscal year. This is for action to accept and place on file.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second. Mr. Lyons.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I know that we spent a lot of time regarding the audit for the city's entire books. The single audit is a equally important document that just covers our use of federal funds. Tonight we have representatives from Prado Renteria. If there are any questions, I would only note that we do have a full agenda. We have no comments. Do we not only have a unqualified opinion, but also no comments. And this is a tribute to Sarah Flax and her team and the accounting staff, as well as our auditors, because as many of you may know, the Housing and Urban Development Agency has provided much more oversight in the last 2 to 3 years. So all of our expenses are monitored, but I would just say much more closely than in years past. And we have had comments on occasion in years past, but we have none this year. So they are here to answer questions. They also have a presentation, but I did not give that presentation up onto the website. It would take me 1 minute if that was a desire. Or I could have the presentation done at a later, less crowded agenda date. We just want to put the audit on file with HUD by September 30th.
Okay.
Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And just before you comment, Alderman Rainey, they're going to be item 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, and 3.7 removed from the agenda. So if we do want to see the presentation, I think now would be a good opportunity to
I
do
don't
so
wanna
if
see
no
a
one has any
presentation.
burning questions.
No,
Okay.
I don't. I
Perfect.
just want to make a comment.
Please do.
I'm going to be curious to see, when this year is all over, how this audit is going to look, because we've not gotten any money. I think it's going to be pretty easy audit, so probably going to be about $25.
I hope that changes.
Yeah. And just,
We're counting on it.
yeah, it's a nice report that you all summarized. And I remember that this is the group that started as a sub on our larger
Yes,
accounting
Prado
project.
Renteria represents the our MWEB component of an audit, and I think we're one of the very, very few, other than Chicago, that would have subcontracting for the annual audit. And that was a great event for the city to start doing that. It broke a barrier of having professional service contracts be considered as subcontracting opportunities. So we appreciate their continued work, and they have kept the business even though the main auditor changed. So I think that was a testament to their ability to handle the single audit work. We can look at that at the end of this audit cycle, meaning 4 years, on whether or not the council wants to rotate all auditing firms, including the single audit.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
I'm going to stay right here.
Yeah, because the next ones that are coming up. All those in favor of, for action and accepting to place item A 3.3 on file, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. If you want to take us through item 3 or is Dave, item 3.4, 3.5? You want to take us through that? Who wants to tee it up?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. 3.4, 3.5, and 3.6
Six.
travel together.
And
3.7 is CCS regarding fundraising, and we would also feel that that's also one that can be held just until full council. Please let me explain. We have item 3.6, the WTA consulting amendment. That would show us moving from schematic design to construction drawings. As a speaker noted tonight, you probably wouldn't want to do that until you see a good presentation on the schematic design, and that is what special order of business is. So we would like to have the opportunity to show the entire public process that was gone through, as well as the final design, so that we can have the council consider Woodhouse, Tanucci and Associates, the architects, have them moved forward to the next phase of the Crown project. Another item that was brought up tonight in public comment was having someone qualified to be a part of this project. Well, while we value our engineering staff greatly, they do not get the opportunity to build a building from scratch every day. We work on streets, we work on water tanks. We don't build $30 to $40 million buildings every day. What we're looking at in the item 3.4 is the hiring of a construction manager. And this would have a representative that, as noted in the report, could be just our representative and look over all of the next phases of the production of the drawings and also then into construction, or, as noted in the report, could become the actual, for lack of a better term, the general contractor. And we would still go through a lot of the same services, the same procedures, but what we want to do is go out for RFP to look at what construction managers are out there that could potentially help us control both cost and quality on this project, and instead of just doing it as a bid. And you know, as we would for a street where we know what the cost of asphalt is and we know how wide our streets are, this is a much more complex project. So 3.4 is one that we hope to we're asking for permission to go out for RFP. We do not have an RFP yet. So with that being said, as the chair pointed out, these could all go to the full council as individual items for approval after having seen both Woodhouse Tanucci's schematic design and where we're at on the project, and then the chief financial officer will give you an overview of where we feel we're at on funding and total cost for the project.
That's fine. You know, the one thing that I want to share in the committee, Marty, I had an opportunity to look through the process, and I'm really happy how the MWEB process is laid out in the specific proposal. And I think when we take into consideration that it's going to be somewhere between the $40 and $46 million range, I think similar to NSP2, this creates a wonderful opportunity for our Evanston residents who own business with the capacity to participate in this project. So I can follow up with you offline, but I do want to talk a little bit about the way it's laid out in this particular document and where in it. So, for example, on page 152, when I look through the contractor assistant agencies, if they're actually working with Evanston contractors. So how are Evanston local contractors going to know about this bid process, and how do the larger companies find them throughout this bid process?
And we will definitely outline that as a part of the construction management, as opposed to doing a straight bid advertised in the paper, because immediately when we do that, we've automatically put ourselves into our normal process of bid and subcontracting, and MWEB is then down in the subcontracting, where we could end up under construction management looking at a lot of variables as far as who gets hired, what they're doing, how everything comes together. Not saying it will not be competitive. It will be a competitive process throughout and transparent. But getting a construction manager on early allows us the opportunity to better define how we want to build the whole apparatus that will build the building.
Sure.
Instead of just saying, here's our bids.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey?
While there's no evidence of this, if you look at the plaque in the entryway of the library, I played a major role in the building of that library. We did that for that library. We had an owner's representative oversee the entire construction of the library. And we came in under budget and ahead of schedule. And it was an amazing process. And I would really suggest, if there's any way you can see those documents, just to see how that worked. I mean, I know these people are all very capable and skilled and, know exactly what they're doing. But I mean, it was a real public thing, and it just might be interesting to see how the council was involved in it and how a committee was involved, and architect and the contractor, but how the owner's representative worked and brought it in under budget.
We will review it.
And they really represented us, and it was a really good thing, and I'm glad we're doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so It's already been moved, so we're going to remove item A3.4, A3.5, A3.6, Marty, and also A3.7 to the council, all right? Those are off the agenda. Do I need a motion for that? Alderman Rainey made the... You seconded.
Most recently, you've just made a motion to move them on to the full council,
Okay.
and then without a vote, and that's sufficed.
Okay, thank you. Item A3.8, Alderman Fleming.
Item 3.8, termination of Smithereen Pest Management Services contract, with staffers recommending the termination of the current contract between the City of Evanston and Smithereen Pest Management Services. The termination request is due to unmet contractual obligations. The staff is recommending hiring another rodent control company to replace Smithereen until the end of the 2017 calendar year. This is for action.
Director, you want to give us a little bit of insight?
Good evening, Committee Chair Braithwaite and members of the committee. Yvonne Thomas-Smith, Public Health Director for the Evanston Health and Human Services. As you know, we are recommending hiring another rodent control contractor. We had actual 3 bidders during the initial process. We've given you the cost that they've offered to pick up the services from October 1 through the end of December of this year. And then at the termination of this year, we will do another RFP for the remaining 2 years of the 3-year contract that we had with Smithereen. But even after our greatest efforts, and after their greatest efforts, they just don't have the capacity to honor the scope of the work that's required.
Alderman Rainey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know that you worked hard at getting them to comply, and Ike and all the people in the department tried. However, I think this is a really good example of the lowest bidder who appeared responsive in the proposals, not always the best choice. And I am going to argue in this case that while the other low bidders appear to be responsive, we had very good results, did we not, with Rose in our previous year with them? How many years?
4 years.
4 years. I am going to move to negotiate continuing the remainder of the year with Rose. I see that their request is for $19,000. I don't know if that's negotiable or not, but I'm going to move that we go with them. We have a serious problem. We really do. I had a conversation with a woman yesterday at the St. Francis Family Safety Fair, and her car didn't work. She took her car in. There was a rat's nest in her car. She drives her car every day. Mm-hmm. I mean, we cannot continue to have this problem in this town. And so I don't think Rose is going to solve the problem, but at least they were on top of the problem.
That's true.
And they provided good service. And so I move that we rehire Rose.
And I'm going to support you in that and second it. Alderman Fleming?
I just have a quick question. So would we, whoever we choose, if it's Rose or whoever, would we then go back out for RFP in January?
That would be correct.
That would be fine. Okay, and this is a sidebar with the rodent care. Is there something we can do about the skunks? Is that within the scope of someone's job?
It is. That's in the scope of the animal warden.
Oh, okay. We can't add that to the poison for this rodent
Not
people.
that I'm aware of.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
Could we give him a gun? We got to.
It's a big issue. Obviously, everyone's
Sure.
laughing because they know it is. So I wanted to ask.
Sure.
Yeah. So we're supportive. I guess if Alderman Rainey, I'm going to interpret your motion that we go with Rose and authorize staff to negotiate that contract.
Sure.
and make it effective immediately?
Sure. If we go with the suggested vendor, the contract will start October 1 through December 31st, and staff will go out and do an RFP for the remaining 2 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I have one question.
Please, Alderman Rainey.
Is a thought. Is there any way we could negotiate their original bid for the contract where we did not accept them and took Smithereen instead?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Okay. So they bid on the Smithereen, on the contract that we accepted, Smithereen,
Yes, that's correct.
right? Is there a way we could take that contract for 3 years minus the time we've not had them?
I think the question is, so how long was the original contract
The
for?
original contract was for 3 years.
So 3 years.
So how many years are we into this?
This is our first year
Oh, that's
of
what I
that
thought.
3-year
Yeah.
contract.
So you would want to see them negotiate to fulfill the following
That's what I'm wondering.
remainder time? Yeah.
I'm wondering, could we do that?
Makes sense?
I'm not sure. I'm going to yield to Marty to answer that. It's an RFP question.
City council, do whatever you want.
If I understand the question right, we could approach Rose and negotiate for 2 years and 3 months.
That's what I'm wondering.
So that if we, I would say that we would still like your approval tonight and to come back to you with a contract, because it'll go over $20,000, and we would just come back to you with a contract for Rose. And the law department in the past has written a separate resolution or a separate council action when we do something that's not an RFP. This is services, so it's not necessarily a bid, but we have done something like this when we've had single source, meaning that there's only one person in the area. It's not the only person in the world, but there's only one good vendor that we can use. So we have done this in the past, and we can bring it back to the council. But we would like to have the action that you get started right away on October 1st for the remainder of the year, and then look at the, what's that? Yeah, we don't want a gap, and then we would do it for the remaining 2 years.
Okay. I just want to thank you and your staff. I mean, we went into this contract with a lot of questions. You acknowledged those questions. You invited them out. You gave them every single chance. And just thank you for responding to the concerns of, the folks behind here as well as our residents. So I look forward to
Absolutely.
seeing you come back to us with a good contract. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item 3.9. Who has that? Alderman Rainey?
All right, 3.9, this is a change order number 2 with Copenhagen Construction for the Fountain Square renovation project. It modifies the completion deadline for portions of Fountain Square Memorial to May 1st, 2018. There's no increase in costs, and it has to do with delays in receiving things, et cetera.
Is there a second? It's been properly moved and seconded. This is for action. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor of passing item A 3.9, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item A 3.10, Alderman Simmons.
For action, staff recommends that City Council authorize the city manager to execute a contract for the removal of stumps from city parkways to the low bidder Alvarez Incorporated in the amount of $34,920.41. Funding for this project is included in the 2017 general fund. The adopted 2017 fiscal year budget allocated $75,000 to this account, which has a current balance of $59,525, and this is for action.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Alderman Fleming.
I just have a quick question, Director Stoneback. Is this for all the stumps, like stumps that I know I have some on my street that a city worker removed a tree, and then I have another one where I think ComEd or somebody removed a tree. So are these all stumps or just the stumps where the city has removed the tree?
I'm going to ask Paul D'Agostino to come up and respond to that.
But even if we didn't cut them.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. The answer to your question is yes. If we know the stump is there, it will be included no matter who removed it. But it is strictly on parkways.
All right, so then I can make sure my lists of stumps are available to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further lights, all those in favor of passing A 3.10, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item A 3.11, 3.12, and 3.13, our staff is asking them to hold those items, and I'll have Director Stonebeck please address the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Friday afternoon, one of the proposers qualified their proposal. So this is not a bid, it is a request for proposal. And I had not had the opportunity to meet with the Corporation Council yet to determine which way to go with this and what we can and cannot do on that. I have a meeting scheduled with him tomorrow when he returns to work. So the current contracts run through the end of through the end of October. So we have the opportunity to award these at either meeting in October. Hopefully it will be the first meeting. But we want to make sure that we do what's in the best interest of the residents of Evanston now that qualification has come up, and I need to discuss that with the city, with the Corporation Council.
You're not going to tell us what it is.
At this point, I would prefer not to know.
I do need a second to hold it.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. The items are...
All of them, right?
All of them.
Everything.
That is correct. Item 3.11, 3.12, and 3.13. All right. The next item is item 3.14, and that's staff waste fund analysis. Is there a presentation on that?
I have a presentation on that, if I could get the remote. Thank you. So what the PowerPoint that I'm proposing to show is very similar to the PowerPoint that was shown last Wednesday, so I'm going to move through some of the beginning slides very quickly in respect for the time here. We did have a meeting on September 20th. About a dozen members showed up. These were the concerns that were raised at that point. The first question is, have we conducted our analysis of recycling regarding having it outsourced? We have not done a thorough research on this. We have estimated that the cost for the city employees to provide this service in-house is around $1 million. It's similar to the residential refuge pickup, which is came in at the low proposal at 1.5. Now that $1 million doesn't cover costs such as workers' comp or things like that, but straight in what's in the solid waste fund, it would appear that providing the service in-house is less expensive than contracting it out. And because we are picking up recycling rather than the yard waste and the refuge, it's not as strenuous work, and I believe our worker comp cases have come down on that. There's a concern about placing the food scrap in the large yard waste containers. The yard waste containers are the same quality as the refuge containers. They're both 95 gallon. And we have discussed with the health department, and they say as long as food scraps are going into a similar container as what it's currently going into, that they don't feel that this would be an issue. Why don't we generate revenue from our recycling products that we pick up? There's just not really a market for it. The only, to my knowledge, the only recyclable material that's generating any revenue is just white paper. And so to sort all that and get to just that doesn't really seem like it's feasible, which is part of the reason we closed down the recycling center several years ago. And that's why we take the recycling materials to Groot. They take it for free. We don't have to pay to get rid of it. They collect enough recyclable materials from all the different municipalities that they can separate it and realize some profit from doing that. We have never asked if there was any kind of a payback that we could get, which is something that we will ask for in the future as we move forward. There was a comment about not bearing the costs of the service and the property tax. That's up to the city council to decide. There's an interest in having a rate structure that incentivizes waste reduction. In my opinion, we have that. If you have a 95-gallon cart, you pay $17.95 a month. If you have a 65-gallon cart, you only pay $7.95 a month. Therefore, with the smaller cart, it means that you would have less debris, we hope, indicating that you're putting all the recyclable materials into the recycling bins and using a yard waste and disposing of yard waste appropriately. So if there's other methods of looking at that, we'd be glad, staff would be glad at looking at those and considering them. And then we have not, since last Wednesday, had the time to explore what other municipalities are doing.
Quick, Alderman. No, keep going.
So in our RFP, we sought proposals for the first 4 items. The last item is something that staff is bringing forward about moving off the pilot program to having a full program there. Residential is once a week in 95 or 65-gallon carts or any additional carts. We do dispose of the material at the Solid Waste Agency of North Cook County. We are required to do that per our commitment with them, and there is a fee to dispose of that, but it's a fee generated based on the average of all the municipalities that are there. And we do collect recycling by city employees in the 95-gallon carts, and the recycling materials taken to Groot's Material Recovery Facility. Condominium refuge, this is for buildings 6 units or greater that are at least 75% owner occupied. Under contract, the refuge is collected twice a week. At some locations, they require more than that, and any service beyond that twice a week is directly dealt with between the vendor and the building. The city does collect the recycling at the condominium buildings, and again, and we also take that recycled material to Groot Recovery System. Yard waste is once a week by contractor. It's a 30-gallon craft bag with a sticker on it, or bundles with a sticker on it, or you can have a yard waste cart, and the yard waste is taken to Groot's Elk Grove facility as a current provider for that, and it's taken to a compost rather than a landfill. This is just a summary of our current services. Under the RFP, under residential refuge, we looked at the basic service as well as 2 alternatives. The alternatives had to try to deal with staffs hoping to come up with a better way of handling all the special pickups. We knew that about 50% of our special pickups were 3 cubic yards or less, and then alternate 2 would be pick up everything that was in the alley. The low proposal at this point is from Groot at $1.5 million. Staff is not recommending the alternatives because of the increased cost. Doesn't seem to justify the additional benefit that we get from that. Right now, the low proposal for condominium service is provided by Lakeshore, who is the current provider on that as well. Yard waste, we tried several different alternatives on this as well. Alternate 1 and 3 had to try to do with having a shorter season for using stickers, going from 8.5 months down to just 2.5 months. Those alternatives did not prove any financial benefit, so they were thrown out. Alternate 2 was provide a food scrap for 12 months, have the yard waste collection for 12 months on a voluntary basis, but again, that came in a lot higher. And then alternate 4 was to have a mandatory yard waste / food scrap pickup, meaning we have about 6,000 properties that have a yard waste cart. We would mandate that the remaining 6,000 properties get a yard waste cart. We have to buy all the carts. We would have food scrap pickup all 12 months, and it would be mandatory. But again, all those alternates were much higher than the basic service. The low proposal received right now is from Lakeshore for $623,000. One of the things that was included on that was that Lakeshore would be willing to receive food scrap in the yard waste carts during the 8.5 months of normal collection. So That's what staff until Friday was recommending, and we'll have to see how that plays out. Bid item 4 was a standalone food scrap program. This would be for commercial properties that are interested in participating. The RFP established a price that would be locked into for a year and then had the ability to be adjusted based on a 1.5% to 3.5% increase based on the CIP. And the low proposals from Collective Resources. Staff did not bring a proposal to award that at this time tonight because we realize that we need to come up with a modification to the city code to allow the exclusive franchise pickup of commercial food scraps. And we'll bring that back at the next council meeting. In the RFP, we attempted to tighten up some of our control over the vendors that are providing that. One is to have a goal to hire an Evanston resident throughout the term of the contract. This is not a contract in the normal sense that we could require the LEP program, but we tried to make it a goal. We're looking to have a greenhouse gas reduction of 3% per year by the vendor that's providing the services. The RFP specifically wrote in that they have to provide reports on a monthly basis and then provide quarterly reports and attend quarterly meetings so we can review the status of how the work is being completed. We're trying to put the onus on the provider to look at the data that the 311 is providing them rather than having the city staff tell them, well, look, here's the list of missed pickups. You can see there's several of them on here that were missed multiple times. Correct that. We're hoping to make that the responsibility of the vendor. And one way that we're looking to do that is by having this bonus and penalty performance measure. The acceptable range is 168 to 192 missed pickups per quarter. So over a 3-month period, that's what it is. I believe that comes down to about 14 to 16 missed pickups per week, which when you're going to 14,400 properties, that's a very low percentage. The way this would work is if in a particular quarter they had less than 168 missed pickups, then we would pay them $1,800 during the next quarter, divided out. It's 3 monthly payments of $600. If they exceeded the 192 missed pickups, then there would be a penalty of $1,800, which the city would deduct $600 for the next 3 months from their invoice amount.
And Dave, can we pause for a second, because I think this is a really important point. And this is the first time that you've done something like this in a contract, correct?
This is, we've used bonus and penalty before on our sewer projects for completion dates, but not on a service contract like this, to my knowledge.
So just to call out to members of the committees and the residents, I mean, we received so many complaints regarding missed trash, and we've tried to work with the vendor on many different things in terms of video, and we've utilized 311. So I'm going to say that I'm really glad to see this as part of the contract, and we have our city manager here also.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good evening. Again, as the chamber is filling up with folks here for other items, Mr. Stonebeck's presentation and a few more slides has some questions regarding rates. Alderman Rainey had asked some questions at the last meeting regarding shifting some of the costs from ratepayers to the property tax. So we've done some analysis on that. We've shared some of that with you during the course of the day. Is it your desire this evening to spend more time talking about that? Would you prefer that we put that off as well for 2 weeks? Really what our question is, just to get a sense from the committee, should we continue to go down this route of both looking at the property tax as well as rates? Do you not know? Would you like more time to discuss? Or would you like to spend some time this evening talking about it? So before Mr. Stonebeck went any further, I wanted to interject with that question.
I think I'll open up to members of the committee. Time is about close to 7:15. Alderman Rainey, followed by Alderman Simmons.
We have to know what we're talking about, and we don't know what Mr. Stonebeck knows from conversations he's had today. So, but let's say what he knows isn't vastly different in terms of dollars from what we know. And the information you provided today, based on my request, would indicate first of all, let me explain my request. I asked today, based on the total amount of increase from refuse collection, recycling collection, and yard waste collection, what was the total additional cost spread across all users for all services? And the amount was whatever it was.
What was it, Mr. Stonebeck, just for the record?
About $457,000, I believe.
400 and close to $460,000. Okay. So my approach to that amount of money was sanitation is something that everybody in the city has to embrace. I mean, it's just something that we all have to embrace. Whether you're rich or poor, whatever, we have to embrace it. Whether you're a landlord or a homeowner, a tenant, whatever. And my attitude is, if we put that on the tax bill, and I asked how that would spread across, the cost is infinitesimal. When you look at the spreadsheet the city manager gave us, if we spread it across all users, compared to the regressive cost to each person who receives a water bill. It's just so much less a burden on the tax bill. And I think we ought to really, really consider adding the increased cost onto the tax bill. I'm not saying we do anything different with how what we're receiving now. Leave that as it is. Add all the additional costs from this year going forward onto the tax bill. It just makes sense. It's just minute. I mean, in some cases it's $30 or something, and you divide that by 6 to see what it would be on your water bill, and your water bill is going to be a lot more than dividing those numbers and that next to the last column by 6.
Yeah.
A lot different.
And so, before we move further, I just want to address the
I don't
folks that...
see how we can talk
No,
about
I
that tonight.
agree, and I just want to address the folks that are sitting in the outside of the chambers, that we talked about this in the beginning of the meeting, that it's going to be a really long night. We have a number of items that are before us, and so for those that are standing, and if it's uncomfortable, I'm going to encourage you to come on inside and take a seat, especially if you're going to be speaking at the next meeting. And so we've asked for your patience at the top end of this meeting, and I'll ask for your continued patience while we go through the issues before us, and we're about halfway through the agenda for those of you that are paying attention. So again, if you're here for the 7:15 meeting, please come on in, have a seat, make yourself comfortable, and we're going to try to move through this agenda as quickly as possible. Alderman Rainey, just in response to your question, I agree. I think that there are some really important numbers that are in front of us, and I know that Dave, Director, presented that has a side that speaks specifically to looking at the rate increase versus doing a tax increase with a blend of the two. So that's one thing, and then I also have a comment from Alderman Simmons.
But Chairman, I would like to see, instead of my just, dribbling this stuff out, I would like to see, City Manager, I would like to see staff take that information and then take a couple of actual bills and compare the two.
Okay.
And
I think
to
he
see
might.
What would the water bill look like with the person who has a yard waste cart or have stickers on their thing? Just so we can see what it's going to look like.
I don't have a slide for it.
And we can do our best to do that. I mean, obviously, this is not an apples-to-apples comparison.
Right.
We will give it our best shot to do that.
We could just take, just take a couple of actual bills. Just
It's layered. It's a layered conversation. Alderman Simmons? Okay. So
perhaps, Mr. Chair, what I could suggest is there's clearly an interest on the committee's part to continue to pursue the property tax only way to go, so we can.
Not necessarily. I mean, I think from what I've seen and read in the packet, I'm interested in looking at a blend between the both.
Okay.
I
And
can't
certainly
speak for
staff's
that.
recommendation would be a blend between both.
Okay, okay.
So perhaps what we could do is provide some of those examples that Alderman Rainey has requested in 2 weeks. We can kind of refine this data. Hopefully, at the end of 2 weeks, we will have contracts ready for you, so we'll have real numbers, and we can continue the discussion at that point, if that's the committee's desire.
And keep in mind, we do have a deadline in terms of when the contract expires, but Director, with everything that we have in mind, can you just review the one slide that talks about the 3 options that we need to think about?
Sure. So this slide shows a mix between property tax increase and rate increases. One objective, though, is to reduce the amount of transfer. So
you may want to explain that.
Right.
Why?
So right now we're transferring $1,055,000 a year from the general fund into the solid waste fund, and what I've presented shows a reduction of $350,000 a year. And the reason that we want to do that is that this does affect our having the negative fund balance. Well, the general fund transfer is funds that could be used for other things. What we also want to try to do is bring the solid waste fund out of the negative, and having a negative fund balance affects our ability to sell bonds and what our bond rating is and things like that. So this proposal is to raise the rates in 2018 by 9.5% or 9% for residential, 3% for condo, and then a mixture in the solid waste, but also to have a 0.5% property tax increase. So 1% property tax increase is $410,000, 0.5% is $205,000. This slide, and I'll convert it to something else that would show up on a bill, just shows if you have a 95-gallon cart with the proposed rate increases, you would pay $18.60 more a year. You'd be a total of that. If you had a 65-gallon cart, it would go to $8.40. The yard waste cart would go up $25, and if you bought 10 stickers, it would go up $7.50. This is the slide that shows the property tax. So based on the value of your home, this is what you're currently paying city taxes. A 0.5% would result in this increase, and that would be your new tax the following year. So the other thing that we looked at is just having property tax increases, and if we did only that and went for the general transfer reduction as well as balancing the budget, we would require a 1% tax increase over the next 3 years. Each year, a 1% increase. And if we did the rate increases only on the sanitation charges, it would be 9% in 2018 and 8% in 2019. And obviously something in 2020 would have to happen as well, just like we would have to have a property tax increase in 2020. So that's just real quickly on that. I will try to demonstrate next council meeting what the impact would be to property taxes compared to what the impact would be on water bill for different scenarios.
And Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we would propose then to perhaps narrow down some of these options regardless how you fund them. We would like to take back some of that transfer, so we'll look at that as well and try to narrow this down to a few more fewer options for you to consider, and then you can decide how you want to spread them out. Okay. But we appreciate the council's thoughtful discussion on this, and hopefully we do this every 5 years and we'll be done for a while.
Thank you. All right. So what's your recommendation on item 314?
To hold it again.
To hold it again. So move to hold item 314, or I move to hold item 314.
Second.
It's been moved and second. The item is held over to, what's our next meeting? 10/9. Perfect. All right. Alderman Simmons, would you like to take item A4, please?
This is for action. Staff recommends City Council adoption of Resolution 73R17, authorizing the City of Evanston execute a settlement agreement in Trinick Lark, City of Evanston. This is for action.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, that's 3-1. Item A5, Alderman Fleming.
Staff recommends City Council adopt Resolution 75-R-17, authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the lease agreement with PharmaCann LLC for the city-owned property at 1804 Maple Avenue. Because of uncertainty associated with the State of Illinois pilot program, PharmaCann is seeking to amend the first extension option from 3 years to 1 year and keep the second extension option the same, which is 3 years. If the amendment is approved, the lease will expire on December 31st, 2018 instead of December 31st, 2020. This is for action.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Alderman Rainey, item A6, please.
This is for action, Resolution 74-R-17, authorizing the manager to execute a lease agreement with Northwest Center against sexual abuse for commercial office space at the Civic Center. This is a lease renewal in the amount of $550 a month for an annual rent of $6,600.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Simmons. A7, please.
This is for introduction and action. Staff recommends City Council adoption of Ordinance 98-017, which will bring the city code into closer compliance with the Illinois Municipal Code by specifying police powers in the city are reposed with the police chief and sworn members of the Evanston Police Department. Staff recommends suspension of the rules for introduction and action.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Someone want to comment on this real quick?
I want to know why we have to suspend the rules,
And I didn't want to give up my badge either.
and I don't want to give up mine either.
Good evening, Michelle Mason Cup, Deputy City Attorney. This is basically an antiquated power that we don't believe is placed with aldermen and the city clerk and the city manager. It really should belong with the police department. Police powers to arrest individuals should lie with sworn officers. It's simply that.
So what problem are we trying to fix here, City Manager?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I think Ms. Mason Cup handled it, addressed it appropriately, that this section of the code was recently brought back to my attention, and in reviewing it, I thought that perhaps that was not appropriate for where we are as a community, and talking with the mayor and some members of the council, there seemed to be agreement there, and so that's why we're moving forward with it this evening.
Any other comments?
What does state statute say?
I believe it's local control. The other statute, of course, deals with the carrying of firearms for local elected officials, and under state statute, local elected officials have the ability to carry firearms. That was amended 7 or 8 years ago to require those local elected officials who wish to carry firearms to have the same training as law enforcement officers. So those really are the two issues regarding local elected officials, local public officials. So it's a local control thing, not only in the state of Illinois, but in other states that I have worked in California was the same way. So I think, again, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, it's my recommendation that we make that change, that only the police chief and sworn police officers have peace officer status.
But we can still carry guns, right?
But you can still carry guns with proper training, yes, Alderman.
All right.
Well, if we can still carry guns, that's
Okay. All right. I'll give up my badge then. Any other additional comments? We'll call the question. All those in favor of passing the item, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is that a no, Alderman Rainey? I'll join you.
No, we're being stripped of all these powers.
I got you. All right. We'll keep on moving. Item A8. Who's got that? I'll take it. It's an ordinance 95-0-17 establishing a new wholesale water rate for the Village of Skokie. This is for introduction and action.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Item A9.
Staff recommends adoption of ordinance 101-0-17, by which the City Council would amend Section 10-11-5C, Schedule VC of the City Code to establish a three-way stop control at the intersection of Simpson Street and Dodge Avenue. The estimated cost to install 2 additional stop signs is $150. Funding will come through the General Fund Traffic Control Supplies. This is for introduction.
Alderman, second. It's been properly moved and seconded. Alderman Simmons.
Thank you. I hope that we can pass this. This is a pretty fast-moving section of Simpson near Dodge. There is not currently a stop going east-west, and we have our families and our children that are crossing over to go both to Twiggs Park as well as to walk to school to Haven and to Kingsley. So other families with young children, our elderly, we have Over the Rainbow that is actually a block away. It would be helpful and it would improve our safety if we could have a three-way stop sign here, and I'm hoping that you can support that.
You're going to recommend suspending the rules?
I'd like to move suspension of the rules and for action.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded on item A9, ordinance 101-0-17, to move it for introduction and action tonight, if we can make that amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item A10, Alderman Fleming.
Oh, again? I just went.
It's my turn.
Oh, it's yours? My apologies.
Ordinance 90-017 amends the city code, parking prohibited at all times, to delete the south side of Central Street Bridge from the schedule to allow parking on that side of the bridge. Alderman Ravel recommends suspension of the rules for introduction and action. I move approval.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item A11, Alderman Simmons, please.
This is for introduction. Staff recommends that City Council adopt ordinance 96-017, amending City Code Section 8412, imposition of sanitation service charges to add a fee for recyclable materials at multifamily apartments 6 units or greater. The proposed fee would be $1.85 per unit per month and be imposed beginning January 1st, 2019 is for introduction.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, all those in favor of passing item A11, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item A12, Alderman Fleming, or is that you, Alderman Simmons? Fleming, go ahead.
Staff recommends approval of ordinance 81-0-17, authorizing the city manager to execute a sale contract for city-owned real estate property located at 2005 Gray Avenue to Evanston Township High School, District 202, for affordable housing. A 2/3 majority vote is required for adoption of this ordinance, and staff has recommended suspension of the rules for introduction and action.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Alderman Rainey?
Yes, I looked through this. I did not see on here where, I saw a lot of references having to do with the closing about taxes, but is this going to be on the tax roll
Yes, it will be.
when it's purchased?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So the city has only owned it for a very short period
Right.
of time, maybe 2 months, and we will sell it to a affordable buyer.
Okay.
So yes, it will go back on the tax rolls. Well, it's already on the tax rolls. We never took it off.
Right.
Yeah,
But it will be on the tax rolls.
correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have 2 items for discussion. I think we dealt with the ex-offender hiring policy earlier. We heard a number of speakers Alderman Fleming, you wanted to set up a meeting with our legal team and HR with a couple of representatives to review the policy?
Yes.
And, okay, so is that, Michelle, something we can do internally? Perfect. And then we also have item APW2, role of the residency for city employees.
And so that was my referral for HR. And so I have some more thoughts, but because it's a long night, I'm happy to remove that and
Or
speak
maybe
to
roll it
Jennifer.
into that same.
Yeah, or just have a conversation with Jennifer.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much. All right, we have APW3, water shutoff for non-payment follow-up. That's also for discussion.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Darrell King, Water Production Bureau Chief, Public Works Agency. So I'm here tonight as a follow-up to our July discussion on water shutoffs. I walked away with some directives that evening, and one of those was to provide historical data on shutoffs. So I went back to 2015, 2016, and currently 2017. And in 2015, 2,006 shutoff notices were mailed out. Friday prior to the shutoff, which usually occurs on that following Tuesday, accounts on the shutoff list were 1,139 in 2015. And accounts that were actually turned off in 2015 was 402. 2016, 2,003 shutoff notices were mailed out. The shutoff list on the Friday prior to shutoff was 1,077 for the year, and accounts turned off 415. Currently in 2017, 1,323 shutoff notices mailed out. 829 on the shutoff list prior on that Friday, and accounts turned off so far this year, 325. So when we look at the total number of accounts, we have 14,400. The average number of shutoff notices mailed, and this number only includes 2015 and 2016, 13% or 2,004 on average, and the average number of accounts turned off for those 2 years, 408, or 2% of the total amount of accounts, 14,400. Assistance programs that we currently have, the payment plans are offered or managed by the collector's office, emergency assistance and general assistance managed by the Health and Human Services Department, and budget billing, that was another directive to go out and find information about. It's currently not available. We'll talk more about that. This table is from a American Water Works Association study that was done, a report that was put together in 2014, and it covers AWWA water utility members' average percent of uncollected residential revenues, and that means just uncollected. You usually recover it through liens on the property. 278 respondents participated, and so none. There were 9% or 26 respondents who had no uncollected revenues. 0.1 to 1%, 176 respondents, 63% or the vast majority. 1.1 to 2%, 15%, 43 respondents. 2.1 to 3%, 17 respondents, 6%, and more than 3%, 6% and 16 respondents to that. If we look at what the city of Evanston looks like with that number, shutoff cycle as of July 27th, we were at 0.62%, August 29th, 0.59%, and the October projected right now it's 1.66%, and it's higher than the others because shutoff notices and second notices haven't gone out to those accounts yet, so that's why that number is higher. But as you see, the previous two cycles are within that 0.1 to 1.0 along with everybody else, with the vast majority of utilities. So this was pulled out of that same 2014 AWWA report. A high number of uncollectible bills, generally more than 2% revenues, is usually a sign that there's a serious problem. So as you could see, we were in that 1.0%, and well under the 2% and definitely not more. Another directive that I received was to put a message on the second and the final shutoff notice, alerting account holders of assistance. So message appears on both the second and the shutoff notices, located at the top of both notices, and it's bolded out to make it easy to identify. And the message reads as this: the City of Evanston has a number of assistance and outreach programs for customers experiencing difficulty paying their water bills. Please contact us prior to the shutoff date for information, and we provided the 311 number. And you also requested a follow-up. Hey, did anybody call 311 and request that assistance? One resident responded to the message regarding assistance and outreach programs via 311. The resident was ultimately referred to the Health and Human Services Department for emergency assistance, and the resident received emergency assistance and the water was not shut off. So finally, you wanted for us to look at budget billing and what could that look like here in Evanston. This is an example of an account that frequents the shutoff list. And what that would look like, the budget billing amount is $148.22. Within the graph, the red line indicates the budget billing amount. So as you can see, anything above means that the budget billing amount is less. Anything below the budget billing amount is more. So during the months of, for instance, September and July, that budget billing amount would help. November, January, March, the budget billing amount will actually be higher. So, that's something to take into consideration, would that help or not. Another example, a family of 4, 2 adults, 2 kids, their budget billing amount, $144.15, and the red line budget amount. And again, during September, November, the budget billing amount is actually higher. In January, March, and July, the budget billing amount was actually lower, so it would help out in that case for a family of 4. And this final example is an example of a property with lawn irrigation. And as you can see, that budget billing amount is $620, so they're irrigating, they're using a lot more water. It could be a larger residence. And again, during the months of September, November, and July, that budget billing amount would be lower, so it would be a benefit. Whereas during January, March, and May, the budget billing amount is actually higher. So, you have that in all 3 examples. You have that appears to be 3 months it helps, 3 months it doesn't. So finally, pros and cons. Budget billing can help make budgeting easier because, you have that constant amount, what it's going to be. Budget billing helps avoid higher bills due to changes in seasonal usage patterns. Now, that's more apparent in natural gas and electricity when, you have to heat or cool, during those seasons. During water, you more so can control that. If you can irrigate less or not do it at all. But that's a pro. And then budget billing option available via our current billing software, our Aqua system. So that wouldn't be an enhancement if that's something that you all wanted to do. It's available. It's built in already. The cons would be budget billing can lull people into consuming more water. So someone may think, this is my budget billing amount, I can use as much water as I want. That's not true. Budget billing can result in a high year-end bill. Goes back to that first bullet. At the end of a budget billing period, there has to be a true-up event that happens to see if a person paid enough for the water that they consume. So using as much as you like, a person could end up with a high bill at the end of that period. And finally, budget billing can result in increased staff workload. So say, for instance, you just have a handful of accounts that sign up for it, maybe no big deal. But if you have hundreds or thousands of people that sign up for budget billing, sign up, monitoring, true up period, that can really be an increased workload on staff. And that's what I have. Any questions?
Alderman Rainey?
How many people, or how many residential units do we have that are, let's say, in the last 2 months, are without water for 2 months? Occupied residential units.
So for the past couple of months, in April 17, June 9, August 15, and those are vacant accounts, vacant.
But I'm not talking about vacant. I want
Oh, she wants to-
occupied. What do you mean? Occupied. How?
So with people living in the actual units?
Yeah,
I don't have those numbers tonight.
But you do have them someplace, right?
Yeah, I could find that out to see what that looks
what
like.
do we do when we know about that?
So there's a process with that. Once it's known that, hey, somebody is in this property and it's not vacant and they're actually physically living into that property, that's when our Health and Human Services Department would investigate to find out, what's the status of, that family or that individual in that property.
But we have that situation existing in Evanston, right? People who live in
Yes.
residential units without water.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Director Stonebeck wanted
I
to-
would like that information ASAP. Not right this second, but like in the next 24 hours. I'd like to know what wards they're in.
Do you want to address the
And
first
then
question?
I'd like to know what our reaction to that is in terms of service.
Okay.
Because to me, once you have no water,
Yeah.
no matter what time of year it is, that's an uninhabitable unit.
That's correct.
Yeah. And I know if it's a rental, then we shut them down. So I want to know, what do we do if it's not a rental?
Okay. Are there any other questions?
That's
Mr. King, thank you very much for your detailed report.
yeah.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. We have one last item, item 4, Library Capital Improvement Plan.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, in the interest of time, we're going to bring this back another evening, but I wanted to say a couple of words. As we move forward with the fiscal year 2018 budget, the capital plan is going to be multifaceted. One important part of that capital plan is going to be the council's consideration of capital improvements for the library, specifically a major plan that the library plans to move forward with for the main library. We made available to you, and it's on the website, a series of slides which we'll bring back to you, which were renderings of the main library. What we had hoped to do tonight was to begin a discussion to talk about limited capital resources, not only for the library, but really citywide, and what the impacts that will be for the capital budget. As we are currently scheduled for budget presentations, we have one evening devoted to capital projects. So I thank Director Dancik-Lyons for her patience and her staff's patience this evening, but I think we'll move that discussion to that evening instead. But I do want to kind of raise a flag that this is an issue that the council is going to have to consider moving forward, not only with the 2018 budget, but also in the future years. And that's balancing the commitment that the Evanston Public Library has for investing in its facilities based on the debt issues that the whole city of Evanston has. And while I think we'd all would like to maybe making investments in all of our city facilities, the library has been very focused. The library has done a significant amount of planning, and they're ready to go. And so we're going to have to weigh, and the council's going to have to weigh how much capital debt we continue to take on, what portion of that is devoted to the needed works at the library, what portion of that's devoted to other works throughout Evanston. So it's a major issue, and I think just given all the other matters before the council tonight, it would be unfair to you and the community to really get much further into this. So with that, Ms. Lyons, Mr. Lyons, Ms. Lyons and Mr. Lyons are both here and can answer any initial questions, but our recommendation is just to move forward in a couple of weeks, and we'll come back as part of the larger capital discussion.
Thank you.
Director Danzik,
Would you like to make a couple of, I know that you're here, I see some of your board members are here. I do have a question that between now and whenever we get to see your presentation, because there wasn't a lot of information in the packet, will you host any public meetings at the library or any place else between now and the next time that you're in front of us?
Chairman Braithwaite, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, we have been discussing these proposed renovation plans at our library board meetings, and I wanted to bring this to you so that we could begin the discussion with you as well. I wanted to note that we have, through the library fund, been retiring the debt that was issued for the main library, and given that retirement schedule, I felt that this was an appropriate time to bring forward plans for a proposed major renovation. The library opened 23 years ago. 23 years ago, we looked up books in a card catalog, and we stamped date due stamps by hand. We've got more than 38,000 people a month coming in the main library. We cannot meet the demand for community rooms, for teaching, for learning facilities for our residents of all ages. And so when we have the opportunity to look at this plan, you'll see that the proposed plan turns office space and back office space into public space, we redo and create many more meeting and learning spaces, and can better meet the needs of our community, as well as raising and improving technology and creating a computer lab. So I look forward to talking to you about the elements, as well as talking to you about how to pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
She hit it right on the end,
All right.
as well as talking about how to pay for it.
Thank you all very much. Before we adjourn, just quickly to the residents that have showed up, earlier this evening we mentioned that we have a very long agenda, so we apologize for the delay, but we have a lot of issues that's before us this evening, particularly as we move into budget season and close out the end of the year. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn and have P&D start at 8:05. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you. The AP&W meeting will start at 8:05.